I'm really excited today to show you how to do the moss stitch sweater. I'm designing it for an adult size 8 or 10. These are the materials I've used. 2 skeins of impeccable yarn in Kelly Green. 2 skeins of impeccable yarn in Rose. These are weight 4, so you could use any equivalent. These are 100% acrylic yarn. Prim hook, 5 millimeters. Fiskars scissors. It may also be helpful for you to use a darning needle and stitch markers. The way we construct this sweater is you start with the front panel in a color, and then we do the shaping of the neck and collar. And then in your second color, you will do the exact same thing, a panel shaping a neck and collar. We will do the side panels. You can see the colors here. We will do 2 side panels and then seam all of that together. And I'll show you how to do all of those things today, including the techniques of the moss stitch, magic circle, and then into part 2 of my videos, I will show you how to do all these color changes with the sleeves and how to do the decrease with moss stitch. And we will go into the hems of your sweater, and that will complete it in part 2 of this video series. So it's a bit longer, but it is a more advanced tutorial, and let's get into it. I will start with the impeccable yarn in a rose for the front panel, and then after you're done with the front panel and you shape the neck and the collar, we can use the other color to do the back panel and shape the neck and collar. The first thing you'll want to do is a magic circle. Grab the yarn between your thumb and your first finger, wrap the yarn around your first 2 fingers twice, making an X on top. I hold it in place with my ring finger. Grab your hook and go under the first part of the X and on top of the other part of the X and pull that yarn through and underneath. Turn the hook towards you to make a loop on the hook. Reach over with your hook and grab that yarn and pull it through the loop on your hook. Remove your fingers. Pull down to tighten this knot right here. Find your yarn end, unweave it a little, and then tighten that magic circle a little bit to make it easier to work into. For round 1, we will do single crochet into the magic circle and chain 1. That's your first moss stitch. Single crochet into the magic circle and chain 1. That's your second moss stitch. Single crochet, chain 1, your third one, single crochet, and chain 1. So you did 4 total single crochets with chain 1s. Find your yarn end and pull on it to close that hole in the center. You always end your rounds by finding that first single crochet and slip stitching into it by pulling it all the way through. You always start a new round by turning and chaining 1. For this yarn end, you will want to make sure you tighten that and weave it in very well later, otherwise it could start unraveling your project. Find your first chain 1 space, single crochet into it, chain 2, single crochet again into that same chain 1 space, chain 1. Find your next chain 1 space, single crochet into it, chain 2, single crochet back into that same chain 1 space, chain 1. Find your next chain 1 space, single crochet into it, chain 2, single crochet, chain 1. Find your next chain 1 space, single crochet, chain 2, single crochet into it, chain 1. Find your first single crochet, slip stitch to end round 2. You see how the yarn is starting to unravel a little bit there, so you just want to keep that tight. Turning to start round 3 and chaining 1. Now find that first chain 1 space, and you can see here where you have these 4 corners of chain 2 spaces and then chain 1 spaces in between. So find that first chain 1 space, single crochet into it, chain 1. Next you'll find the chain 2 space, the corner, and into the corner you will always do single crochet, chain 2, single crochet, chain 1. The next is a chain 1 space here in the middle. Single crochet, chain 1. Go into the next space, which is the corner, your chain 2 space, and into the corner we always do a single crochet, chain 2, single crochet, chain 1. The next one's a chain one space, single crochet and chain one, that's a moss stitch. Into the corner, do a single crochet, chain two, single crochet, chain one. Next is a side piece here, so you single crochet and chain one, that's your moss stitch. And then again into the corner, one more time, single crochet, chain two, single crochet, chain one. Find your first single crochet, slip stitch into it, turn and chain one. Round 4, and until the panel is at your desired size, you will continue to do moss stitch, which is your single crochet, chain one into those chain one spaces. You will do single crochet, chain two, single crochet, chain one into each corner space, and repeat that. So for round 4, you're going to have 2 chain one spaces where you just do the moss stitch inside of. There's 1 and there's 2. And then you'll find a corner. So as you continue to grow your project, each of those sides will grow, adding an additional moss stitch to there. Continue growing your panel until it's at the desired length that you need it. If you want it bigger, you'll make it bigger than what I have in this video tutorial, but for my video tutorial, I do have it big enough for a 10 or even an 8 size for women. I'm just going to finish up round for you. Chain one. And then here, right before where you started, you'll find that you have that last chain one space. So you'll do a single crochet, chain one, before finding the very first single crochet that you did. See, it's not here because that's where I did the slip stitch, chain one, and turned. You'll slip stitch into that first single crochet. And see how the square is starting to form. And again, as always, we turn and chain one to start off. And you'll start off into that first chain one space, another chain one space, and then a corner. And then when you go all the way around, you'll find you'll have another chain one space here before you slip stitch back into this first single crochet you'll make. Continue doing this for as many rounds as you need to make the panel the size that you desire. For me, for a size 8 or 10P adult female, the number of rounds I did, one side had 31 single crochets and 30 chain one spaces for a total of 124 single crochets and 124 chain ones with 4 chain two spaces. Once you've completed both squares, we're going to work on shaping the collar. What that's going to look like is we're going to do the left side and then the right side after that. After we've shaped your collar, we're going to do the 2 side panels, which will look something like this. And after we do the side panels, we're going to work on the sleeves. Once you've completed it to where it's the length and width that you want, mine is about 13.5 inches by 13.5 inches. And it's a total of 31 single crochets across one edge with 30 chain one spaces in between. And then of course you have the chain two corners. So that's the total width of mine before I start working on the left panel and the right panel. Chain one. I've done my first single crochet, chain one. You'll continue doing single crochet, chain one all the way to your corner. When you get to the corner, instead of doing a single crochet, chain two, you're only going to do a single crochet and then turn your work. And you'll chain one as well. So what you should have for your front panel, left side, is half of the panel has this extra row of single crochet, chain one. Row 2 starts with a decrease. To decrease, I put my hook inside the chain one space and pull up a loop, and I go into the next chain one space and pull up a loop, and I yarn over and I go through all 3 loops on the hook, and that's my first decrease. Chain one, and then you'll do moss stitch all the way till the last stitch, or you'll do a single crochet on top of the last stitch. I'm at my last chain one space where I did my single crochet and chain one, and here's my last stitch, and I will single crochet onto the top of that stitch. Turn your work. Chain one, do moss stitch. Go into that chain one space, chain one, and do moss stitch all the way down till you get to the first single crochet. So at the end of row 3, you will single crochet into the top of that decrease stitch that you did from the previous round. Turn your work. Chain one. For row 4, you will start with a decrease, single crochet, chain one, and then do your moss stitch all the way till the last stitch, which is where you'll put a single crochet on top of the last stitch. I've done my last moss stitch in that chain one space, Now we'll single crochet on the top of that last single crochet. Turn your work. For row 5, chain 1, do your moss stitch, go into that first chain 1 space, single crochet chain 1, and do moss stitch all the way down, and you'll end it with a single crochet on top of the decrease stitch. I'm at the end here. This is the decrease stitch we started with in the last row. Single crochet into it, turn your work. For row 6, chain 1, this is your last decrease row. Decrease into that first 2 stitches, chain 1, you decrease into those last 2 chain 1 spaces, and go ahead and do moss stitch all the way down to the end, and at the last stitch you will do a single crochet onto the top of last stitch. There's my last single crochet chain 1, and into that last stitch, which is right here, I will do my single crochet. Turn your work, chain 1, and now you'll do moss stitch all the way to the end and do a single crochet on top of the last stitch. The last stitch was that decrease stitch from the previous row. So that's the end of row 7. For the remaining rows, you will do the same as row 7. So you'll do a single crochet, moss stitch all the way down, and then single crochet on top of the last stitch. Do this until this piece is at your desired length. And for me, it came to a total of 9 rows after row 7. So that means I did rows all the way to row 16 with the same pattern of moss stitch all the way up. Once you've completed making it the length that you desire, fasten off where it was on the outside, grab your yarn and attach it to where you started your left panel. So that's basically right in the middle. Attach it into that chain 1 space. That was the first chain 1 you started with. And all you're going to do is slip stitch into that space. Once you do that, then you're going to start moss stitch into the next chain 1 space. And the next chain 1 space is right here. Go ahead and start your moss stitch by chaining 1, single crochet, chain 1. And later you'll have to weave in that end that's right in the middle of your shirt. Moss stitch all the way to the end. As you did in the other side, you're going to do a single crochet into that chain 2 space in the corner. And then you're going to turn your work. You're going to do the exact same rows that you did for the left panel on the right panel now. Chained 1 when you turned. Row 1, you're going to moss stitch all the way across. Leave 5 total chain 1 spaces open. I have left the 5 remaining 1 spaces open. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is where you attach your yarn. That means I have 11 single crochets that I just did. And you turn your work and chain 1. The same as the left side panel, you will do a decrease for row 2 by putting your hook into that chain 1 space, pulling up a loop, put your hook into the next chain 1 space, pull up a loop, pull through all 3 loops, and then continue with moss stitch all the way down until you do a single crochet on top of the last stitch. Here's the last stitch, and I will do single crochet onto the top of that. Turn your work, chain 1, go into that first chain 1 space and do moss stitch all the way to the last stitch, where you'll do a single crochet on the top of that stitch, which was the decrease stitch from the previous row. This is row 3. Here's that decrease stitch, and I will do my single crochet onto the top of it. Turn your work. The end of row 3, you're going to have 10 single crochets, 9 chain 1 spaces. So once you turn your work, you'll chain 1, and you'll do a decrease for row 4. Then chain 1 and do your moss stitch all the way to the end. On the last stitch, you will do your single crochet to the top of that last stitch. Here's the last stitch. I finished with my chain 1, single crochet into the last stitch. Turn your work and chain 1. So at the end of row 4, you did a total of 9 single crochets and 8 chain 1 spaces. In row 5, you will do your moss stitch right into that first chain 1 space, moss stitch all the way down, and do a single crochet onto the top of the stitch from the previous row, which was the decrease stitch. At the end of row 5 here, find that last stitch, do your single crochet into it, turn your work and chain 1. Row 6, you'll start with a decrease, and this will be your last decrease until you continue with row 7 through however many you need. Chain 1, single crochet into that first chain 1 space and do your moss stitch all the way down, and single crochet to the top of the last stitch. Here's the last stitch. And now for row 7, turn your work, chain 1, and row 7 you'll start with moss stitch all the way down, and then you'll single crochet onto the top of the last stitch In this case, it'll be the decrease stitch from your previous row, row 6. Here it is. And now you'll continue growing without decreasing all the way until it's the length that you desire. For me, I'm going to go all the way to row number 16. Once you've completed each of the collar shaping, measure out how wide you want your armhole to be. Mine, I made about 8 inches from the top to here. So this remaining piece is 10 inches. When we work on the panel next, you want it to be 10 inches in length so that you'll attach it to one side like so. I'll show you how we attach it as well. We're working on the panels next. You're going to make 2 of these. I'm making mine 10 inches long and 6 inches wide. I'm starting with pink yarn. Make a slip knot, chain 29. After you've done 29 chains, single crochet into the second chain from the hook. Chain 1, skip the next chain and single crochet and chain 1 into the next chain. Continue this pattern of skipping a chain and then doing a single crochet chain 1 into the next chain all the way to the end. At the end, you should have 14 single crochets. Turn your work and you just end with a single crochet there. So chain 1, and you'll do single crochet into that chain 1 space, chain 1. Continue doing a single crochet into the chain 1 spaces and a chain 1 for your moss stitch all the way to the end. And at the end, you will do single crochet into the last stitch. At the last stitch, place a single crochet. Now you'll change your colors. I leave mine attached and I just bring it up because we're doing 2 row repeats. So attach your color and I turn my work and then I'll do a single or a chain 1 and I'm going to pull those pieces tight in a moment, but first do your single crochet into that next chain 1 space and a chain 1, and then you can go back here and secure it with a knot. I'm at my last chain 1 space, chain 1, and then find your last single crochet and single crochet right on top of it. Turn your work, chain 1, continue with moss stitch all the way to the end. At the end, you'll single crochet on top of the last single crochet, change color, and do it over again. I'm at my last chain 1 space, single crochet, chain 1, find your first single crochet into it, switch colors, keeping it attached, don't cut your yarn. Grab it, turn, pull down on your other yarn to kind of hide that piece, chain 1, put your hook into that first chain 1 space, single crochet, chain 1. And you'll just continue doing that manner where you'll start growing on the sides here. This is what it'll end up looking like, but that's okay because we're going to crochet over that in the end and we'll sew that piece into the other panel. Continue with your single crochet, chain 1 all the way to the end, single crochet on top of the last stitch, and then this is row 4. At the end of row 4, single crochet on the top of that single crochet, turn your work, chain 1, continue doing moss stitch all the way to the end for row 5. As you come to the end of row 5, single crochet on top of the last single crochet, change your colors again for row 6. So rows 1 was your chain 29 and then starting off with a moss stitch. Rows 2 and 3 were when you switched over to the green, and then 3 and 4 is when you did the pink. Continue doing rows 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, repeating that same pattern where you switch the color and you're doing moss stitch all the way up until you have a piece that's 10 inches long or longer if you are a taller person. This is for a small, short sized person. Continue the same pattern of rows 2, 3, 4, and 5, switching colors between the 2 until it's the length that you need for your side panels. You'll need to make 2 of these, one for each side, left and right. The next step in the process is to seam the panels onto the sides, and then we'll seam the shoulder together. Line up your 2 panels, your front and back panel, so that the edges are aligned. And you can start off with seaming up your shoulders. So I have the wrong sides out right now, facing each other. And you can see I've already seamed this side, haven't weaved in the ends yet. And with the wrong sides facing outward, I've seamed in this edge, and I'll show you how I sewed that together. So do that next, and after this we'll work on the arm piece here, the sleeves. Grab a lengthy yarn, darning needle, and a stitch marker. Keep that handy for when you put the side panels on. And again, with the wrong side facing outward. Go through the first stitches up on the shoulder seam. Pull it through and knot it on this side to secure it. And then I like to take the 2 outside loops, go through this loop on the outside, then pick up the outside loop on the other panel and go through those. Same thing, go through the outside loop, pick up the other outside loop, continue picking up each outside loop and pulling your yarn through. And at the end, go ahead and knot this, and you can cut the yarn after you've knotted it and weaved it in a bit. And then we'll work on the side panels. With the side panel, line up the bottom to the bottom edge of one of the front or back panels, and then place a stitch marker here to secure it to the top there temporarily, and start seaming from the bottom up so that it'll look something like this when you're done. We'll do the same method of seaming, or this side you just kind of grab where it lines up with these stitches, but then on these stitches you'll grab the outside loop here, so the back loop. And so you'll start with a knot here and then seam up using the back loops on the back panel or front panel, and then just seam all the way up to here to the arm gap. Once you've completed it, tie off in a knot and weave in your ends for both sides. Once you've completed seaming one side of the panel onto the back panel, go to your front panel, line up the 2 edges again, and place your stitch marker here to loosely secure it. Once you've done that, thread your needle and start seaming from the bottom up. And I like to knot this first piece here. Once you come to the end here, knot in the end and weave in all of your yarn ends. Once you've completed it, turn it inside out and your seam should look really seamless on both sides here. You can see how it kind of just goes right in there, no issues. On the top as well, you can see how it looks. Now you could just be done here and it'd be more like a vest, but the next thing I'm going to do is help you work on the sleeves.